Hello guys, welcome to MindMajix, and in this special session our trainer will explain everything you need to know about the NoSQL. Before beginning the session, let's look at the topics you will cover in this video. We shall start with Need of NoSQL and continue with History of NoSQL, Introduction, Architecture of NoSQL, Advantages of NoSQL, and end this session with Disadvantages of NoSQL. Please check the caption to jump between the topics. If you are new to the MindMajix channel, please subscribe and press the bell icon to get quick updates about the new tech tutorials, free webinars, and career-enhancing shorts from working professionals. Like and share the video with your friends and career aspirants. Without any further delay, let's start the video.
Hello everyone. In today's session, we are going to learn about NoSQL database. So what is NoSQL database? NoSQL stands for Not Only SQL Database. So we need to know what is SQL. SQL is a structured query language where we require table. Under table, we require rows and columns in order to store data. Whereas in NoSQL, we don't require table or rows, columns in order to store data. We don't have to design any kind of schema under NoSQL in order to store data. That's why it is called as Not Only SQL. Then what was the need of NoSQL? As we were already having the RDBMS available with us, as well as we were aware about the SQL database. So what was the need for NoSQL? So modern RDBMS simply don't scale to internet traffic. That means if there was a huge number of traffic in the network, RDBMS was not supporting that traffic, due to which the web performance of RDBMS was going down, and even database was getting crashed. So in order to overcome this drawback of RDBMS, we have came up with NoSQL database. So the main solutions for RDBMS drawbacks were scaling up and scaling out under NoSQL. Scaling up means vertical scaling. Now what is vertical scaling? Adding more power, that is CPU or RAM, to an existing machine. Suppose we have a machine. After a period of time, we need a particular amount of resources added to that particular machine in order to store a huge amount of data. So if the memory of that particular machine is getting full, we need to upgrade it with CPU or RAM. So on existing machine, you are adding additional resources in order to get your huge number of data get stored on it. So for that, we are using scaling up. Scaling out, which is also known as horizontal scaling. So scaling by adding more machines into your pool of resources. That is, you have a huge number of resources like CPU, RAM, or you have 4 to 5 number of systems with you or servers with you. Under that pool of resources, you are adding additional resources. So whenever your traffic goes up into the network, you have the capacity to balance that traffic. So as you will have number of devices under your resources, so the traffic will get distributed in the equal amount of that servers. So it is known as scaling out. So if any of the company or system practice is using this scaling up and scaling out, they will not face issue related to web performance issues where the database goes down. Then in order to apply the scaling up or scaling out in the network, we have different approaches. First is master-slave. Then we have sharding, multi-master replication, in-memory database, and no joins. Now comes what is and other system as slave. So all the basic operations or all the important operations and data will be stored on the master, whereas the basic operations will be performed on the slave system. So if masters goes down, the slave system will also go down. Slave system is already used just for read purpose, whereas on master, read and write both operations are performed. Then comes sharding. So what is sharding? It is a partitioning pattern for the NoSQL database, where we will have servers placed at different locations. So that means server will get partitioned into different locations and data will be stored on different location for each server. So if one server goes down, still we will have access to different server of different location. So client or user will not have to face any kind of issues if one server is going down. They will be able to access those data from other servers. So that is known as sharding. Then comes multi-master replication. Multi-master replication means we will have number of masters and data will be shared between all those different servers. And read-write operations will be performed on all those servers. So data will be partitioned on all servers, and based on the request of the data, it will be fetched from the appropriate server. Also, the replica will be created for each master server. Then comes in-memory database. In-memory database means where data is stored in the main memory or RAM of a computer. So instead of storing database under the cache memory, it is stored under the main memory, that is RAM or RAM of a system. So in order to access that data, user will have to access the hard disk. So the operation of reading and writing the hard disk will be reduced if you are implementing in-memory database for scaling out. Then comes no joins. So the best part here is under NoSQL, joins are not supported. That's why the point is called as no joins. Under NoSQL database, you will not be able to perform any kind of join operation in order to get the details from the tables. As we don't have tables in the NoSQL, that's why joins are not supported. Then high prices from RDBMS vendors. Due to the high price of RDBMS, customers switched from RDBMS to NoSQL. Then the next point was like big companies like Dig, Facebook, and eBay. They were saving data like in terabytes, which was a huge amount of data. And it was very difficult to store that huge amount of data in rows and columns. After storing their data, when they were trying to fetch those data, it was leading to performance issue. That's why all these big companies like Facebook, Amazon, they are storing their data under NoSQL database, where the data is stored in a different format, such as a distributed format, graph format, key or value format. So it is easy for them to fetch the data as per their requirement. Then comes reduce object relational impedance. Here, we don't have the relational database. That's why the dependency of the database, like dependencies of the object on the database is reduced. That's why the topic or the point is known as reduce object relational impedance. Then we will come to the point, history of NoSQL. So when was NoSQL introduced? First of all, Carlos Torzi, he has introduced the term NoSQL in 1998 to name his lightweight database. Lightweight as well as open source relational database. So at that time, in 1998, this NoSQL was not in the boom. Whereas again, Eric Evans, a Rackspace employee, he reintroduced the term NoSQL in 2009 to discuss the open source distributed database. Earlier, it was introduced as lightweight open source relational database, but in 2009, it was introduced as open source distributed database. So as it was distributed, it came into both. Now we will see the basic of SQL, that is NoSQL. So what is NoSQL? NoSQL stands for not only SQL, where we will not require any kind of tables, rows, or columns to store data. Then we will not have to define any kind of fixed table schema under NoSQL. Whereas in SQL, you will have to define table schema before storing data into it. In NoSQL, we can store data like horizontally scalable, easy to add more information. As we have seen vertical up, vertical down. That is vertical scaling and horizontal scaling. So here it is horizontally scalable. You can store a huge amount of data by using horizontal scalable feature. Then it avoids join operation. As we don't perform or as we don't have any kind of tables under NoSQL, we don't have to perform or it does not support the join operations. Then comes relaxation of ACID properties. So now what is ACID properties? ACID properties stands for atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. So these ACID properties are supported in SQL, whereas in NoSQL, these ACID properties are not supported. Then we are distributed in nature. NoSQL is distributed in nature as we can distribute the servers at different locations, and from different location we can access those data. That's why it is called as distributed database. Then architecture of NoSQL. Several NoSQL systems use a distributed architecture like master-slave, master, or master-race. Under master-slave architecture, we will have one master and a huge number of slaves. You can say n number of slaves. So the data from the slave will be fetched by the master and the data will be stored on the master. So only the read operation will be performed on the slave systems, whereas on the master, we will have the read-write operation. So whenever slave wants to fetch any kind of data, they will have to access those data from the fetch those data from the master system. Once the operation is performed, that data can be transferred to the master system once again. That's why it is called as master-slave distributed architecture. Then we have master-master, where all the server will act as master and all server will have the amount of data like which needs to be accessed by each person. So if one person is requesting the data which is stored on some different server, the two masters will communicate between them, and then the data from the other server will be transferred to that particular user. So in this way, the huge amount of data will not be stored on a particular machine. Instead of it, it will be distributed between two or more systems based on the architecture which they have. Then we have master race, where we will have all the slave systems. There will be no master available for them. Slave will act as master as well as slave. Then we have the next point based on distributed hash tables. So now what is hash table? First of all, you need to understand what is hash table. Then it will be easy for you to understand the distributed hash table. So hash table is a decentralized data store that looks up data based on key value pairs. So in this hash table, the data will be stored in the form of rows and columns. But the data will be accessed with the help of key and values. So for one key, we can have multiple values. So key will act as a unique ID here. And if you are able to find, or if you are aware about your unique ID, with the help of that unique ID, you can get the associated data. That is the data which is linked with that particular ID. So hash table will contain the table where we will have the data stored in the format of keys and values. Values will be the information and key will be the unique identifier for that particular value. With the help of that unique identifier, that is key, you can fetch those data. So we can have n numbers of hash tables, and based on the number of tables, you can fetch the information from this category. That's why it is called as distributed hash table. Then we have easily scale out by adding more servers, and failure of a server can be tolerated. That means if we have more number of servers and if any of the server get failed, still the user performance will not be impacted because they will be able to access the information from different server. So unless and until the server which goes down is up, the user can access those data from a different server, as the data is shared between all the servers which are connected in a network. Provide full asset guarantee by adding a supplementary middle layer. So here we don't have the asset guarantee. Instead of that, we are using supplementary middle layer. Under supplementary middle layer, we will have all the functionalities of asset under NoSQL in order to maintain the data consistency, data security, and data stability. Then we have the advantages of NoSQL. So what are the different advantages of NoSQL due to which a huge number of customers are moving towards NoSQL? It is cheap and easy to implement due to open source. As it is open source, the customers don't have to give the installation charges for it, or they don't have to buy it. They can just easily download it from the internet and use it into their organization. Then easy to distribute. They can distribute NoSQL as per the requirement. Scale to available memory. We can scale the memory as per our requirement. If we require a huge amount of memory in order to store our data, we can just scale up the memory. Then have individual query language rather than using a standard query language. We can use any of the language in order to fetch the data from the database, that is from NoSQL database. Whereas under SQL, we will require a standard query language or structured query language in order to fetch data from the database. Flexible data model. It is very flexible. We can put any of the number of servers, add number of locations, and you can access the data from any of the locations. So it is flexible in nature. Then asset support is not required for product listings, status update, or etc. So in short, we can say that asset properties are not used or not supported in the NoSQL. Then developer friendly, more developer centric interface. It is easy for developers to store data on NoSQL as if they have a huge number of data. As it doesn't contain any kind of schema or table or columns, so it will be easy for developers to store data under the NoSQL database. And then they can access it with the help of key value. If they are storing it under the hash table, if they are storing with the graph, they can easily access with the key pairs. Then disadvantages of NoSQL. So we don't have any standardization tools in order to maintain the NoSQL standard. It can be used locally. That's a huge disadvantage of NoSQL. Then limited query capabilities. Here we can just execute a limited queries. We cannot execute like all the queries, or you cannot fetch data from all the tables at once, because as join operation is no more supported in the NoSQL, or it is not supported in the NoSQL. That's why we cannot combine the data from different tables and fetch or extract. Then RDBMS database and tools are comparatively mature. As compared to NoSQL, RDBMS data are more efficient and more mature. So you can execute a large amount of query or a complex query under RDBMS and it will provide you with the data. Whereas in NoSQL, we cannot perform the complex query, or we cannot execute the complex query. It does not offer any traditional database capabilities like consistency when multiple transactions are performed simultaneously. So it will not perform like consistency will not be performed in order to perform like multiple transactions at a time. Only one transaction can be performed at a time. You will have to wait until the next transaction is done. When the volume of data increases, it is difficult to maintain unique values as keys become difficult. So when the data will get increased, automatically the keys will also increase in the hash table. So it will be difficult for the users in order to maintain the unique values for each data. And then also it will be difficult for them to fetch those, as they will not be able to maintain the unique values for data. So they will not be able to fetch that data from the table. Doesn't work as well with relational data. Relational data means which contains tables, they have rows and columns. So as NoSQL doesn't support relational data, it will not have tables, rows, and columns. The learning curve is steep for new developers. It's a bit difficult for new developers to learn how to store data and how to fetch it or extract it from the NoSQL, as it uses any query language instead of standard query language. Open source options, so not so popular for enterprises. So the enterprises organization will not support or they will not refer NoSQL to store their data. They will either go for NoSQL or they will either go for SQL or RDBMS, which contains a huge amount of security. So that's why, as it is open source, that's why some of the organizations which works on security base will not support or will not recommend this database in order to store their data. So that was all about NoSQL, where we have seen different features, advantages, disadvantages, what is the architecture, then why we are using NoSQL, all those things. Thank you and have a good day.